In a world where everyone says hello,
they dare to say,
g'day.
Yeah, g'day.
Yeah, g'day!
Yeah, g'day. Yes, good day. Yeah, g'day. Yeah, g'day. Yeah, good day.
Wow, wow!
Yeah,
good day.
G'day. Hey, yeah, g'day. Yeah, g'day, Tim.
Yeah, g'day, Leon.
Tim, I
Yes,
feel like there's another presence in the room with us right now.
There's definitely another presence. It's a human being. He's sitting directly across from us. It's very observant of you.
That would be it. Tim, today we are extremely lucky. We've been joined by Robert Drewe, a renowned international Australian author, who has just written a new book called Whipbird, which we have read.
We have, luckily enough, we did read the book prior to meeting with Rob today, and we've read Our Sunshine as well, which is another fantastic book. Won't be talking about that book specifically today, but Rob's work is fantastic, and we've got him here. How you doing, Rob?
I'm pretty good, thank you.
That's good to hear.
I think, Rob, first of all, we just want to say thank you for travelling, because as you just said, you've been travelling around today. You've come just straight from Ballarat to here, which is a bit of an effort, so thanks for turning up.
No, it's a pleasure.
All right. So, yeah, as we mentioned, you've just written your new book, Whipbird. I guess you didn't just write it, but it's out now, and we had a read. I got to say, straight off the bat, before we ask any questions about it, I absolutely loved it.
Oh, great.
In terms of the way it captures, we were talking about this like all of last night, preparing to meet you today and talk to you today. The way it captures so many different aspects of Australian life and so many interesting characters and viewpoints. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. I as Tim mentioned, I read Our Sunshine a couple of years ago, and so when we got the email from Anyez, I kind of went, I feel like I know this name, and then I read that you read it, and I went, oh man, this is so exciting. So yeah, I already loved that kind of stuff, and then Whipbird was, just excellent. Such a great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
No worries. All right, well, let's launch into some questions about the book, I guess. So, to not give too much away to our audiences, because we want them to read it, it's definitely worth the read. The basic premise of the book is it's a family reunion of sorts, about 160 years after the original ancestor.
Yep.
Connor comes over as part of the British infantry with the Eureka Stockade. That would be correct?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's actually based on an ancestor of mine, my great-grandfather, who was a teenage Irish boy starving during the potato famine, and for the Queen's shilling he joined the British Army and with the 40th Regiment of Foot, and was sent out here to fight at the Eureka Stockade on the wrong side.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And so I took that as my sort of starting point, and I thought, what would it be like? He in fact had 15 kids, 12 of whom survived.
Wow.
And I thought, what would it be like if all his descendants held a big party to celebrate their arrival? And if you do the maths, if they were having 15 kids, a couple in those days, quite a lot of people would come to the party.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I
especially if grog was involved.
well, that's the thing. Get a bit of alcohol there, and it's the winery. I think that's I think what's really exciting about the book is the amount of characters that you've got in there. But what makes the book even more interesting is that you write in the first person all the time, majority of the time, and you get into all these different characters from different sides of the family, whether it's male, female, like kids, teenagers, people that you get into the mind of the ancestor at points in time as well.
Yep.
So I guess my kind of first question when it comes to that is, how do you do it? How do you do those characters so well? Because you do it amazingly. It's seamless. It doesn't seem like Robert Drewe writing as a 15-year-old girl, 16-year-old girl. It seems like
right. Well, I have a 17-year-old daughter, so the dialogue that came from that is reasonably accurate.
Yeah.
What I was considering while I was writing it was the host is a Melbourne barrister, a rather stuffy Melbourne barrister, who's just missed out on getting a QC, a Queen's Counsel. So he's a little bit bitter. It wasn't how he planned the party, but he's moving from group to group, filling up people's glasses and so forth with wine. And I like to think that as he approached each group of quite different people, they would have a viewpoint, or they'd be discussing something as he came up to them. And so I wanted each group to be sort of represented in a way. And if you think of a suburban barbecue, any given suburban barbecue on a Sunday afternoon anywhere in Australia, sooner or later, as the wine flowed or the beer flowed, various topics would come up. And we're talking about today, contemporary topics would come up. One of them would be climate change. One of them would probably be the matter of Muslims. One of them would be the plebiscite on marriage. So I wanted these people to be talking about these current topics and to voice the sort of opinions that not ones that you would necessarily agree with, but would come up at any given party.
Yeah, I think that was definitely one of my favourite things that I thought you did incredibly well. As you mentioned, all of these different characters, they do talk about these kind of more contemporary situations that we're going through in Australia now, and they voice them from their own. Sometimes it seems kind of generational in the way that they kind of get expressed.
Yeah.
So that was something that really impressed me. Not only the specifics of the characters themselves, but the way that you blended so seamlessly from generation to generation. Because I could see people I know reflected in the way Mick spoke and things like that.
Exactly. Well, he's sort of everyone's grandfather, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that kind of divide he has where, he's got Rani, who's entered the family and kind of opened his mind a little bit, but there's still that.
Yeah, he's trying. His intentions are good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is the whole point, really, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think that's. I think what's kind of interesting, and I think so. As you said, sometimes the opinions aren't what people would see as, I guess, favourable, but it's accurate, and that's what's so good about it. And I don't know. We recently talked with John Safran about his book. Depends what you mean by extremist. And we're looking again at the views of, as you say, kind of what's happening to the Muslim Australians, what's happening in that world. And rather than, I guess, paint the picture of documentarian, you're painting the picture of what happens with a couple of glasses of wine, what actually is said, what's really said, which was amazing. But I guess a really big question that I want to ask early on, because I think it's an important one, is you do touch on the topic of cultural cringe, which I believe is huge in Australia. I think we're the only... I reckon we're the only nation that really has it. Americans love when they see Americans on TV, but we hate it. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It drives me crazy. It drives me crazy on several levels. It drives me crazy that at any given literary festival, say, an American or an English writer with one book under their belt will take precedence over an Australian writer with 12. They are somehow seen as better than us, and it drives me bloody mad. It's just a colonial mentality, and I use that where I've got the jaded skeleton of a man who's a former rock and roller.
Yeah,
I mean rock groups do that all the time when they go overseas, or when they used to. They would have to behave. They would feel self-conscious, so they'd have to behave extra badly. They'd have to be super bands to actually they thought to get across. But all that did was make them embarrassing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of extending on that as well. The conversation that I found interesting that you document in the book, is it Thea or Tia? We were arguing Thea.
I was wrong.
I said
right.
I said Thea. She's having a conversation. She obviously works for Medicine Sans Frontières. And she's having a conversation with a gentleman when she's in Sudan, where he asks her to describe Australia. And I think this is connected to the cultural cringe, and she finds it really difficult. And I 100% identify with that. Is that something?
Well, so do I. Yeah. So she was actually. I mean, I used her in a sense. I liked her character very much. She was very recognisable to me as a bossy person with good intentions.
Oh yeah.
I've been very bossy, but with very good intentions. But when she sort of described what she thought of Australia, she said it sounds as if we're a boring form of Switzerland, really.
Yeah, when you put it down to the political, facts of it all, absolutely. Yeah.
And especially at the moment. And one reason why I wanted to write this book, and the feeling I have has intensified more than it was in 2014 when I was writing it, is really what, well, this is hardly news, what a mess the world seems to be in at the moment, but also how Australia seems to be sort of upside down somehow, where there's heaps of issues out there, but nothing is firmed, and nothing happens with any of them. All that happens is they're put forward, muddied, and then forgotten.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that I wanted these people to be present at this party with that in that atmosphere. So they're all a little bit edgy, and they're all have conflicting ideas, but no one has any solutions or any answers any more than that anyone else does.
No, and I think what's interesting, I guess, when writing in the first person or reading in the first person, it has this weird thing because we're so used to how a story goes when it's told to us in third person or in another kind of way. We're expecting, a big event, a big bit of tension, something to drop at any point. So I found that reading Whitbird, because of reading other books, I'm sitting there going, something big's about to drop, something big's about to happen, and it eventually does. There is big stuff, but because you're just painting such an accurate picture of 2 days or 2.5 days, whatever it is, with an Australian family, I guess it could feel like something isn't happening, but there's so much behind it. It's a 300-page book. There's so much to say. And again, I just find that so interesting. And I think, again, with your characters, when you're writing them, for every kind of, I guess, one sentence they speak, like for Father Ryan, when he's doing his big speech towards the end, for every one sentence that he has, there's 3 or 4 pages of internal monologue of what he's thinking. I guess that's kind of a why question. Why do you do that? Why do you get into that mode?
Well, because I want to bring veracity to the characters. I want them for you to believe that they exist. Basically, it's as simple as that. And what I liked the idea was when there's people of different ages, classes, and genders and so forth wandering around, at the same time as Doug and Mick are arguing about the banking system. In one corner, there's Liam wanting to race, the 17-year-old boy wanting to race off back into Melbourne on what he hopes is a hot date.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't give a stuff about the banking system or anything else. He's absolutely focused on getting into his car, getting away from the party of oldies, and going, finding this girl.
Absolutely. So I guess the next kind of thing to talk about, because we've talked about, obviously, your connection to the Eureka Stockade and how that kind of idea flowed out. The next kind of interesting point of the book or the idea is Connor's connection to being there in his own way on this particular event, which is through Simon, who has Cotard's disease.
Cotard's disease, yeah. Cotard syndrome.
So my question is, because it's an incredibly interesting disease and incredibly interesting concept that he is in a way sharing his consciousness with the ancestor, how did that specific circumstance kind of occur to you as I was
writing it?
Yeah, as your method of
I was wondering about a way that I could introduce the original man, Connor Cleary, the Irish immigrant, into the party. And I heard of this disease this syndrome called Cotard's, which is an extreme form of schizophrenia that can be hastened by a massive drug consumption and things over a life, which seemed to me to be the life of a rock musician. And we know there's plenty of examples. We don't have to look too far for that. But when I heard about the specific disease where people think that they're dead, even though they're still living and breathing, they think their organs have atrophied and they no longer exist. And I looked that up and found a bit about it, and that seemed to me the perfect. He was a husk of a man, and very able to absorb, in a sense. I mean, what he imagined, or is it a ghost? Or one is led to wonder.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice question.
But the presence of the ancestor, and I love that idea, and it for me it made it easier. It's interesting when you investigate Cotard syndrome. There's examples of. There's only about perhaps a dozen examples in medical literature, but there's one in England of a guy who keeps turning up at funeral parlours and and morgues and things asking to be, taken in.
Right.
Give me a break.
Yeah.
I'm dead. But won't you do the right thing?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that is so macabre that they're not scary. They're not zombies or anything. They're just normal human beings who believe that they don't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like when I read it in the book, first thought that you might have invented it, because I was like, this sounds so out there. I can't imagine it. But by the end of the book, like, I don't know, I felt really in touch with Simon's character. Which I guess is at the same time Connor's character, but it's such an ingenious play between the two characters. Like, you have the husk of a character that's present, and then you have the thoughts of someone from the past.
And each of them only really come to any sort of realisation or redemption through the love of, in Simon's case, his daughter, and in Connor's case, his long dead children and long dead wives, really. And so in the essence of it, even when someone thinks they're dead, there's still a little spark of something, which is, I guess, love, that makes them real again.
Yeah, it's a really nice thought, actually. Another kind of big conversation that we had, and again it ties back into the Eureka Stockade thing and Australia in general, it's almost like Australians romanticise things to make up for lost time, is what we were saying. So because we're a young nation, we make up for lost time. So with the Eureka Stockade, Connor's family are talking about how he came and he fought in the war, and he was on the Australian side, is what they're talking about.
Yeah, I think Hugh, even in his speech at the beginning of the weekend, specifically, and you write this, that he makes that conscious effort to play up their military
exactly
service to Australia. Yes.
Yeah, but in reality, like,
well, that's what interested me. I like the idea of an unheroic figure, and this part of it was actually based on my ancestor, who we were always told. The Eureka Stockade boy, we were always told that he eventually became the general in charge of Southern Command, and ran Victoria Barracks in St Kilda Road. That big building there. And he was in charge of that. In fact, when I looked into it, he was the quartermaster, as is the character, in charge of rifle bolts and gaiters and potato rations and things. And
nothing too exciting.
No, but I mean, in the Chinese whispers way of families, everything is always exaggerated in a sense. Like but not only was he on the wrong side, but he didn't get very far.
Yeah, and that's like, there's the whole play, like you talk about the other wars that he fought in, like with the
Maori
Maoris,
Wars.
where he get
Wars,
shotgun pellets in the butt and all that kind of thing. Like, I don't think we can hammer it into our listeners enough, because there are international listeners to the show that we're hoping are going to read the book, and I feel like that'd be a really interesting perspective to have coming from it from the outside. But for us coming from Australia, like, it's just so accurate, it's so realistic.
Yeah.
Every story is so real. We all know a Hugh, we all know a Thea, we all know like it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, as we mentioned, we spoke to John Safran about his book.
Depends what you mean by
Depends what you
extremist,
mean
yeah.
by extremist. Mine went blank for a second, and I kind of said, like, this is a really interesting snapshot of Australia right now. I wouldn't necessarily say your book is a snapshot so much as a photo album.
Yeah,
just a really interesting set of snapshots from so many different points of view of Australia. And as we mentioned, Thea talks about how do you describe Australia. I think your book comes pretty.
Oh, good. Well, thank
pretty
you.
damn close to it.
I did actually consciously think I want to put Australia on the slab and dissect it.
Yeah.
Without that sounding too lectury or anything, because I don't. I hold some of those opinions, but not all of them, and I can appreciate people who hold quite different ones to most ones that are different to mine. But there's a certain attitude that people like Hugh have, where they can see a huge issue like global warming and think, well, actually, it's not so bad because it enables me to grow Pinot Noir grapes where I couldn't before. And it's that sort of, the world's stuffed, but I'm okay.
Yeah.
And that is a peculiarly Australian thing in a lot of cases too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's because we're down the bottom. We always just go, America will sort itself out, and England will sort itself out, and we'll just get told what to do in the end. Is essentially what we.
And suddenly we're in the Philippines. I read today, which amazed me. I would have thought that was a strange little war to get involved in.
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
Oh.
What? Why?
We're
is always the
helping.
question.
We're helping that gun happy president who shoots drug dealers and things.
Well,
We're
as you
helping
talk
him.
about in the book, we're always overseas in some war that
Yeah.
has no relevance to us.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Awesome.
A very particular part of the book that I took great enjoyment in is the discussion about. I get lost. How do you remember characters? I get lost with your characters sometimes because there were so many. I'm just kind of
It's a
sitting here
large
going.
family.
There's a large family. Who was talking? Hugh is the owner of the vineyard. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So Hugh and his wife Christine.
Christine,
yes.
yeah.
I love the conversation about how where Mick's talking about the fact that he went from being a boy that said H to a boy that says H.
Mm-hmm.
Because I am obviously a boy and a man that says H, and I always have.
Did you go to a Catholic school?
I did go to a Catholic school.
Yeah, there you go.
But it was an argument that I've had many times before. But my argument is if my last name is Huxtable, it's not Uxtable. So it's H. But I just thought that was such it's such a tiny moment. But to me, I was like, oh my God, Robert Drewe is in my head. He's thinking what I'm thinking. Like,
Yeah. Do you have? What's your answer to that question? I guess H or H.
I say H, but
You say
I went to a Protestant school. But there were the Catholic members of the family say H. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting.
I think it was an Irish habit.
Okay.
I don't have any strong views. I don't have strong views about it like I do about apostrophes in the wrong place and that sort of thing.
well, yeah,
Sure.
that's just common sense that
Yeah.
no one has.
So that was Leon's kind of little moment. I had two moments. One of them's kind of extended over the period of the book, and I think I know why you went with that. The first one that I'll talk about is when you talk about dancer Stedfords. Is it Mick that talks? Because
Yeah,
no, yes.
Mick is remembering when Thea was a child,
Yeah,
and
going-
he used to take her to dancer Stedfords and
Yeah.
things. Yeah,
So my sisters used to dance, and me and my father would have to tour around to these regional, like Kempsey and all of this sort of stuff, and sit in the regional halls. So spot on, so spot on. It was scary, and I was in a cafe reading the book, and I was laughing out loud and quite embarrassed. The other one is because you currently live in the northern
Rivers,
Northern
New South
Rivers area,
Wales,
yeah. So I grew up in Coffs Harbour myself.
Okay.
My mum currently lives in Pottsville, which is around the Mullumbimby area.
I know.
And your snapshot of that area
Of Mullumbimby.
and the interesting spiritual practices and some of the hypocritical tendencies I guess some of them have was for me so delightful. Is that something that you find yourself? Because I guess living there, do you interact with that sort of stuff?
Let's just say there's heaps of material.
Mm.
There's heaps of material there, and I love the area, and there's people of all sorts. I mean, there's stayed old farming families, quite conservative people who, and there's leftover hippies, and there's young people, there's surfers, things, and there's a bit of everything, and that's what I find in a rather luxurious landscape full of things that can bite you and so forth. But so it's just nice to write about. But I do feel fond of it. But it's still worth taking the piss where it's necessary.
Yeah, I feel the same. That's exactly my feeling towards that area as well. Is it is absolutely gorgeous, and the people are very friendly. But yeah, it's definitely worth taking the piss out of it.
I think most Australian hometowns are worth taking the piss out of at some point. If you take it too seriously, it gets a bit silly. I do want to jump briefly to Our Sunshine because for those of you that haven't read it, you need to immediately pick it up and read it. It's whenever I explain it to someone, I always call it fact fiction. Ned Kelly story. Because to me that's what it is. Because I have a huge interest in Ned Kelly, as you can probably tell from the beard. And reading it, I was like, how could you possibly take all these moments in history? Because we don't have a full picture of his life. We have moments of his life.
We don't have a picture at all, really.
Well, yeah.
Which is what attracted me to the idea.
And you go from that, and yet again, a couple of 100 pages in a book, and you tie these moments that we think we know about together, and it's so realistic. And again, you get into this character, and I guess it's even more so with him because there's not really anything for you to base it on in a way. Like there's no bushranger to walk around to. So I guess how did you come across the Ned Kelly idea, and how did you even get into being able to do that?
Does it make it easier because, in terms of as a writer, because there's not as much?
Well, I thought it was going to make it difficult, but it in fact did make it better. It was interesting in that how I came. I was in the a New South Wales State Library looking up something else, and I suddenly thought of who would be. I think there'd been an article in the paper the day before about the 10 famous Australians or something. It was always, Don Bradman, Dawn Fraser, Phar Lap, the usual things. And Ned's name was there. But, I thought, what do we really know about him? And I looked up his files, and there's more on him than on any other Australian before or since. But it's all either pro-police stuff, saying he was sort of virtually the devil incarnate, or very, very sentimental Irish stuff, saying he's God's angel sort of thing, the best person that ever lived, Robin Hood and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So I thought, what's he really like? And while the library helpers were bringing up stuff from downstairs, I just picked up a random book from the shelves. This is a big library with thousands and thousands of copies. And it was a book by the Victorian photographer, John William Lint, who was a 19th century photographer. And the book did that thing that they do in bad novels. It fell open at a certain page.
Okay.
and it was a picture of a photograph taken of Joe Byrne, who was Ned's offsider, being strung up on the wall of the Benalla jail in a position simulating life, while photographers and police stood around and pressmen of the time stood around laughing at this body being strung up and being photographed, like Joe was actually pointing a gun at him, but his head was down, his arm was down, things. And I found it macabre and cruel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And at that moment, a thing happened, and it sounds a bit crazy, but I had that feeling in the back of your neck where, the hairs rise in the back of your neck and you feel the thing. And I thought, this is something. And I wanted to write it. And I wanted to write the story of the Kelly gang and Ned. And all that was available was, all I wanted to deal with was actual, like a calendar of events, what happened. That's just the bare bones, like 3 pages of what happened on certain dates, so I would get that right. And then I'd make up, because there was nothing on what he was like as a man. There's nothing like on whether he had a girlfriend. There's nothing on anything, really.
Yeah.
And so that gave me complete freedom to make it up. And I used things in it that I thought stood out a little bit more than, a lot more, like his love for his mother, because when he started getting into trouble, he was defending her and his sister. He was defending them against crooked cops and things. And I sort of went on from there. And his friendship, his mateship with Joe Byrne, and his looking after his young brother Dan and that sort of thing. And then I thought of, well, how old were these guys? And even though Ned had, a full beard, at the end, he was still only 24 then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the time when they were rampant, he was like 19, and the others, Joe and the others were a little bit younger, and his brothers and Steve Hart were younger still. So they were really like a gang of bikies or something, really. Or I'm trying to think of a contemporary counterpart, but they weren't these mature, desperados.
No,
they were young men.
Yeah.
Or youths. And I found that sort of interesting. It made it easier, a bit easier to write about. But I loved writing it, and all the way through it, I had the feeling that this will sound a bit crazy, but I had a feeling that I was part of it.
Yeah.
Okay. That I was actually part of the story. And I don't usually get that. I'm usually the observer or the interpreter or whatever. Yeah. But I felt that I was part of the story.
And like as you said, you loved writing it. I loved reading it, and I think as a reader, I feel like I'm part of it. And sometimes I feel like I don't know if I'm remembering fact or if I'm remembering Our Sunshine, because it's all it all fits.
Yeah. Kind of along the lines you were talking about these guys being so young. I think you really capture it well in some of the decisions that Ned makes throughout the books, or even spur of the moment sort of situations, like when they're out in the bush and the troopers come and he kind of just offhandedly kind of snaps and just shoots one of them, and then that's the beginning of everything. Like that's the beginning of the end, and then the killing. Do you know what I mean? Like they weren't these, like you mentioned, weren't these manly desperados. These were kids who were trying to do the right thing and kind of hiding out because they had done the wrong thing, and then in a moment these sorts of situations.
Well, they were fired upon, and the shots missed, but he was a good shot, and he fired back and got them. But I like the. Well, I mean, everyone does. It's why still today you can see Ned Kelly gentleman's tailoring in country towns and Ned Kelly bread and that sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of he's a figure of representing other things.
Yeah. He should be on one of our coins or one of our notes or something like. He's that
Well, it'd
important.
be more accurate if it was on one of our notes.
Well, true. Yeah, everyone knows. But I guess we could sit and talk for hours because it's so great to sit and talk to you and meet you after reading your work and
Absolutely.
and such amazing work. And as I said, it paints Australia so brilliantly. If you live in Australia, you have to read these books because you'll just sit there and you'll just have a whole bunch of moments where you go, oh yeah, that's Steve-O down the road and that's Dave and that's...
You'll see your family and everyone you know in there. Absolutely.
And
but for overseas as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a perfect picture in that it paints the positives and it paints the not so great favorable things.
Yeah.
Which is how you should be presenting things, I think. There's no point,
And if you're an Australian, really, you have to. I feel you've got to actually present things in a way that's a bit comic because we're a pretty comical sort of people.
We are.
Yeah,
and
absolutely are.
That definitely leads me into our last question. So, no matter who we talk to or how serious we talk, we always have one question that we have to ask everyone that we interview that is less serious, although we've asked so many people and the answers have varied, but also gotten people very amped up and agitated, and everyone has a very strong opinion.
Absolutely.
Now, it could be a hard one for you. It might require some memory, I'm not sure. But when you had more hair, how did you wash it, is the question.
Do you have a particular method?
Was it double shampoo, single shampoo, conditioner?
I don't even know. It's been so long I can't even remember it.
It's fun. It's funny if you.
I was an early cut it all short person.
Okay.
I never had the comb over, or the Prince Charles that I gave here in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fancy the haircut that was popular back then and it's popular again now with the hipsters and everything. It's a great question. I love that question because
we'll just take your answer as you don't.
I don't now, but I used to just order whichever shampoo my daughters or wife had in the shower recess, I guess. I wouldn't even know the names of it.
It was probably very good treatment you were getting then if you're trusting their judgment. Probably some great stuff, some colour treatment or that. But
all right, well we'll wrap this up. You've had a big day, and we thank you so much for talking to us about your novel Whip Bird. Once again, please, everyone, go out and buy this. I cannot state this enough. This is actually I loved this book. I was going to swear then. I held it back. I'm being polite because we've got a guest.
There's a guest.
We've got a guest on the show.
Yeah.
No, it was fucking fantastic. To use my French. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Robert.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Amazing. What an interview.
What an interview.
Don't want to toot our own horns, but honk honk.
Yeah. Stop tooting. Ugh, it's so gross.
So good. I could have sat and talked with Robert Drewe for like hours. I want to just grab a beer or a wine and just hang out with him.
Yeah, I know. I was really conscious of the time, especially because towards the end we could see Anyez, the Penguin publicist lady, kind of looking through the window. I was like, okay, we've got to wrap this up. But yeah, absolutely. I could have kept talking to Robert for so long.
He is a very interesting man and an extremely talented writer. As we said, if you haven't read his work before, please go read it. I'm a big fan of Our Sunshine, but definitely pick up Whip Bird from either the Penguin website or whatever reputable bookshop you go to.
If you can find a copy of it. You were looking at a couple of online bookshops.
I was, and
they were out of stock.
It's bloody sold out. It's everyone's just been like, "Yep, got to get it." They heard that we were doing an interview with him. They just thought we had to get it. If the boys like it,
it's purely based. It would be completely based on us. I would say
no other way. But it is actually sold out. But you can buy electronic copies as well if you're into that kind of.
Yeah, I saw a couple of copies left. There was like only 3 copies, I think, at the bookshop that I was in the other day. But they had a couple of copies, so you can still find it. And if you can,
get it,
read it. Yeah, sorry, I burped.
I was waiting what your pause was.
Halfway through, it wasn't a dramatic pause.
So yeah, thank you so much, Robert Drewe, for taking time to talk to people that are 50 years younger than you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an awesome conversation.
It was. He is now the wisest, is the nice way of putting it. He's the oldest man we've ever had, oldest person we've ever had on the podcast by a significant number.
Yeah.
But
he's definitely the wisest.
He's definitely wise, and he was just great to have a chat with.
It's nice to have an intelligent conversation on this bloody podcast for once, mate.
Bloody intellectuals we is. Thank you so much to Anyez from Penguin for organising this one for us again and sending us a book.
Yep, she treats us real good. Treats us right.
Always a pleasure. And thank you, Penguin Melbourne, for having us in your office and not kicking us out. And that was nice. It's a really nice office as well.
It was.
So
It was gorgeous.
We've been in there before. We've got a room.
We're big wigs.
We have big wigs. But yeah, so thank you to everyone that organised it and was involved, and yeah, especially big thank you for Robert for actually just being like, yeah, I'll talk to these. Excuse me, no, I burped. These two boys,
Young whippersnappers.
these lads.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun times.
it was
We'll make this. We're hoping to make this sort of a regular thing as well. Give you the heads up, as it were.
The old radical reading corner.
Yeah, Radical Reading Corner is what we've decided to call it. We want to get some Australian authors on, get some Australian work on.
Penguin, please employ us. What was
Yeah,
it?
spread the word about some of our fantastic writers. Robert mentioned it in our interview, but the word's not out there enough, and we've got some killer writers here in Australia, so
Yeah.
got to share it.
Got to have the platform for us. Penguin, please employ us. I keep hearing this weird sound. I can't work out what it is.
You keep saying that.
But yeah, so as always, thank you to Teylor Smirl Tea, Smelly Tea, for our cover art. It's amazing, and we had some compliments on it this week. So
You certainly
toot your
did.
own horn, Taylor. Yes.
Yeah,
Tim?
you're
Do
looking
you
at
want to
me.
turn? It's your turn now.
Yeah, and of course, thank you to Curtis Fernance, Fern Tree Music. You can follow him on Facebook as well. Just Fern Tree Music, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you for your outroduction work. We're not using anything else on this particular podcast.
Not on
but
this one. The interview was too good to take.
Yeah, he supplies us with the great music that we need for everything that we ever do.
All our music's ever.
He's A-okay with me.
Make sure that you share this around with all your friends. Share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, share it on Instagram. Send an email. Put it on USB and shove it in someone's computer. Put it on a CD if you've still got those.
Put it on a floppy disk and leave it in a strange location, because if it's on a floppy disk, someone's definitely going to pick it up, because I think they're quite valuable now.
Well, yeah, because you look at them and you go, you know what? I've got a floppy disk drive somewhere. I wonder what's on this. And it's like, put some Pac-Man on there too.
Yeah.
If you can find the space on the 2 megabytes of room, you'll get like the introduction of our song just going, in a world, and then that's it.
That's the whole thing, yeah.
So yeah, do that. Rate and review us on iTunes and wherever
Do
else
all
you
of-
can
yeah.
rate and review us.
Do all of those things.
Send us emails and do all those things. You know where it is. www.yeagerday.com.
That's the one. And quick personal plugs. We both have shows coming up in the 2017 Melbourne Fringe Festival.
We do.
So if you are in Melbourne, are
Yep.
going to be in Melbourne,
Or know someone in Melbourne.
come along.
Yeah.
My show's running from the 16th to the 23rd. Jim with a T, tribute show to Jim Henson at the Metropolitan Hotel.
Yes.
And Leon, you do your little plug now.
I was going to, but then you kept talking. No, yeah, so my show, Talk Show with Myself, is on the 25th and 26th of September. 3 shows there at Hair Hole, which is the Hares and Hyena bookshop in Fitzroy. It'll be great. It's a real steal. $15 for a full price, $10 for a concession. So you can't afford not to buy it.
good
And I
stuff.
can't afford not to have you to come.
Yeah, we need the audience members.
But yeah.
You can buy tickets to both of the shows at www.melbournefringe.com.au because it's in Australia.
Oh, I
yeah.
didn't know that. Oh, good for them.
And you just search the name of the show.
Yeah, it's real simple like. So yeah, great. Tim and I both had a great episode. As you know, Tim doesn't like listening to the sound of his own voice, but I sent him the file of the interview and said, Tim, you actually have to listen to this one.
And I did. I listened to the entire interview because I actually really enjoyed it.
We came out of there feeling really, really good and really happy, and we just were, on top of the world. But yeah, so as I said, thanks to everyone. Robert, Anyez, Penguin, you guys are great. We love you. Please keep doing things with us. And thank you everyone for listening, because without you, we'd be dead.
Would we?
I don't know. How will we ever know?
Science.
Yeah. So I think that's it. Anything else, Tim?
I think that's the whole kit and capoodle. I think
Capoodle.
that's how you pronounce it.
Possibly. Well, as always.
As every day.
Yeah. G'day, Tim.
Yep. G'day, Leon.
Yeah. G'day, everyone.
Yeah, g'day, everyone. Catch you on the flippity flop.